So let's go over those rules again. In Peanuts cartoons,
you don't hear Snoopy's thoughts.
Until you do.
My stomach clock just went off. It's supper time. And Charlie Brown has forgotten to feed me.
You don't hear adults' voices.
Until you do.
Patricia, please try and stay awake.
I don't see adult faces.
Until you do.
Blimey, it's a bit dicey understanding these Yanks.
And we're going through every time adult faces have been seen in Peanuts cartoons. So quaff a few root beers with me for this installment of Peanuts in a Nutshell. So yeah, it's another deep dive into Peanuts Esoterica. Ever since my original video on the rules of Peanuts cartoons, I've been working hard to find more. Last year, we looked at every time you heard adults speak.
Meeting of the Coffee Lane School PTA will please come to order.
I'm still working on that rule about Snoopy.
I'm gonna be the big bow wow. Wait till they see the old dog now.
As you reminded me,
Not really speaking, and notice his mouth never
He danced around while the cartoon
that
voice his thoughts.
but it turns out the truth is a little more complicated than that. And as always, the best part of this, apart from getting to obsessively deep dive into my special interest, is the stuff I learn about along the way.
You want to hear the one about my doghouse, my dog dish, and me?
Like and subscribe so you don't miss when we get into it. Now this rule is where you really showed me how many I missed. To the point that by the mid-80s, you couldn't really consider it a rule anymore. But you clued me into a couple of early sightings going all the way back to the first Peanuts feature films.
You saw the ticket usher in a boy named Charlie Brown, who is easily mistaken for a kid because of his size. And the ticket taker at the carnival in Snoopy Come Home.
When I saw a clown in the background of Snoopy Come Home, my jaw dropped.
That's a valid reaction to an unexpected clown sighting. Now file this one under maybe. In You're Not Elected, Charlie Brown, there's this guy who is eating lunch on the school playground, but looks at least 35 to me. Maybe a 21 Jump Street situation? Tell me what you think. And another iffy one, in What a Nightmare, Charlie Brown, Snoopy feels that call of the wild and dreams he's a sled dog. In the dream, we see the shadow of the sled owner, and his trombone is pitched a lot lower. At one point, Snoopy goes looking for some real food and tries to pass himself off as a piano player, in a bar that's full of adults seen from the neck down. But as for whether this counts as an official adult sighting, it is a dream, so feel free to discount it. We talked about You're the Greatest, Charlie Brown, and the first of many sports announcers voiced by adults.
Decathlon contestants to the 100-meter dash, please.
In that same special, we met
Pretty Fabulous from Fremont. He won this event last year.
Glad to meet you. You'll be sorry soon that you met me, kid.
who is either post-pubescent or just one of those kids who gets tall early, so they look like a teenager when they're 9. Which, I have friends who went through that, and I'm told it makes tricks or treats really awkward. Here's one from It's Magic, Charlie Brown.
I found it jarring at first when Snoopy checked out a book at the library and an adult librarian was shown.
I think that librarian might be related to Ms. Bellum. And I cannot wait to deep dive into that one with you. It breaks Peanuts rules that you didn't know existed, and it's straight up one of the funniest ones. The very next special was Someday You'll Find Her, Charlie Brown. A rather problematic story where Charlie Brown develops a fixation on a girl he sees for like 3 seconds while watching a football game.
Right there, as the game ended, the camera was on the crowd, and it zoomed into a honey shot. And the camera stopped on a face, Linus. I've fallen in love!
Even in 1981, that seemed a little offsides. Anyway, with Linus enabling his stalker behavior, Charlie Brown sets out trying to track down his victim.
I'm looking for the little girl who went to the football game last Saturday.
Along the way, the trail leads to this girl who's clearly a few years older.
He's right. You are beautiful.
So I'm beautiful. What do you want?
I have this friend who's madly in love with you.
We also get some adults when they cause yet another traffic jam. And speaking of traffic jams,
there was a kind of sequel to Bon Voyage, Charlie Brown, called What Have We Learned, Charlie Brown?
What Have We Learned, Charlie Brown finds... Hey, just wanted to interrupt myself for a moment here. There were a couple of comments on that original video that gave me pause.
That's a Citroen CV2, not a Beetle.
That's a Citroen 2CV, not a VW Beetle.
When I read these, I didn't immediately twig why they would specify not a Beetle. Not at first. None of whom seemed that fazed by some 8-year-olds and a beagle roaming Europe unsupervised. Then I got it. Now, this is a good time to shout out Zero Richardson's very diligent work making the captions for this channel. If you watch with those captions turned on, you'll see that I said some 8-year-olds and a beagle, not in a Beetle. I know a Citroen from a Beetle. I would not disrespect either of those fine automobiles by mixing them up. My friend Lee is a Volkswagen guy, and he would never forgive me. Beagle. It's where Bon Voyage ended, with these 8-year-olds and a beagle, continuing to travel unsupervised through France. Once again, the special has several adults. Some of them are in footage reused from Bon Voyage. There's this old woman when they trade in the Citroen for another Citroen. Later, they find themselves at Omaha Beach, where Linus recounts the history of the D-Day invasion.
1944. This is the beach where the Allies landed in World War II.
There's historical footage of the battle, given a color wash treatment, possibly because they were aware this was some pretty intense stuff to be showing children without abstracting it in some way. In the framing sequence, with Charlie Brown showing Sally pictures from his trip, we get the most details we've ever seen of Charlie Brown's bedroom, including this Statue of Liberty souvenir, and what looks like a signed photo of a baseball player. It says, "From Stan," which means it's probably not the legendary Joe Schlabotnik. The special still doesn't show them coming back from Europe, so Apple TV could still do something with the European adventures of these 8-year-olds and a beetle. Now here's one I can honestly say I didn't expect. A Charlie Brown Celebration was the first anthology-style special, meaning basically off-the-shelf adaptations of strips.
We have 4 short stories interspersed with several little episodes, all involving the complete cast of Peanuts characters.
One of the segments was based on a storyline from 1979, where Charlie Brown suddenly came down with an unspecified illness. This was a very special episode in the comic. Charlie Brown's illness was the catalyst for a lot of memorable character moments.
What's wrong with the world where someone like Charlie Brown can get sick and then not get any better? I need somebody to hit. We love you, Chuck. We do?
In this scene where Charlie Brown has to check himself into the hospital, they added something just to really ramp up the poor kid's anxiety. Here's the strip, where we get a couple of random feet in the background. And here it is from the cartoon. See if you can spot the difference.
Insurance? I suppose so.
I gotta say, in my research, I'm pretty sure that this is the only time outside of dreams and fantasy sequences that we've seen a dead body in Peanuts. To my knowledge, all other deaths have been off-screen. But if there is another corpse that I missed, let me know down in the comments. Now getting back to living adults, It's an Adventure Charlie Brown was another anthology special. In one of the stories, Peppermint Patty and Marcy spend an afternoon as caddies for Mrs. Nelson and Mrs. Bartley. We see Mrs. Nelson and Bartley in silhouette in one shot. And let's show some love for Dean Hubbard on the trombone, doing double duty when they fight. Snoopy's Getting Married, Charlie Brown, is what I'm talking about when I say that by the mid-'80s, this rule could barely be considered a rule anymore. That special had Snoopy ready to marry a French poodle.
It was her! The girl of my dreams, Spike.
It was love at first sight. And now we're going to get married. Married?
And this was not long after Life is a Circus, which had this circus train driver and also had Snoopy ready to run away with a French poodle. My man has a type. Now, moving on to 1986.
You forgot the special It's Flashbeagle, Charlie Brown.
Yes, I did.
I recall seeing some adults at the nightclub scenes in Flashbeagle.
The scene in the disco is terrifying. He flies like a wild eagle.
So, It's Flashbeagle, Charlie Brown is maybe not universally beloved.
I used to adore Peanuts. Then along came Flashbeagle.
But I am a fan, and I'm not the only one.
Probably my favorite Peanuts special.
It's one of the few times Peanuts tried to ride a trend. It's the 80s, which means aerobics, breakdancing, and pretending everyone wasn't fully into disco 5 years ago. After seeing Flashdance in 1983, Schultz was inspired to draw this strip and to do a dancing-themed special. So the whole special is really just a collection of musical vignettes with slightly more jazzercise to them. If you enjoy good choreo animation, there's some fine work there. It does accurately reflect how, for about 8 weeks after Flashdance came out, we were all tearing the sleeves off our sweatshirts. At the climax of Flashbeagle, Snoopy heads to a nightclub, and you may remember this clip from my Franklin video, where they just had 2 Franklins rather than design a second black character. Anyway, when he goes inside, the club is filled with what look like hip teenagers or young adults.
Always thought the teenagers would be invisible too. Pretty much anyone past puberty goes missing.
And here's where the Flashdance connection becomes explicit. As the title song plays, the dance Snoopy performs was choreographed by Maureen Jahan, who did the actual flash dancing in the movie. Apart from that one shot where it was a b-boy in a wig. Happy New Year, Charlie Brown is mostly adult-free, except for a few glimpses of this framed picture at Peppermint Patty's house. Her dad, maybe? Let me know what you think. We've talked about the adaptation of Snoopy the Musical, with Cam Clark as the voice of Snoopy.
I'm gonna be the big Bow Wow.
Yes, Max Sterling, Liquid Snake, and Leonardo.
Hold it, guys. Now, April, would you like to tell us why those men were chasing you around the sewers?
It also featured a handful of background adults, and another appearance of Mr. and Mrs. Van Pelt. She changed her hair. And later we see the band, and these guys are specific enough that they've got to be caricatures of someone. I hate to do this to you twice in one video, but when the kids are talking about what they see in the clouds, Sally sees...
The clowns are on now!
Okay, no more clowns, I promise. Now here's a major one that I wasn't even aware of, that a lot of you let me know about.
They also showed adults in the Peanuts special, Snoopy's Reunion.
You forgot the special where we see flashbacks of Snoopy's family.
When Charlie gets Snoopy, you can see an adult, and he speaks to Charlie.
Of the adult sightings from after 1980, one of the most significant is Snoopy's Reunion.
That's a good-looking family, Missy. You're a good dog.
The farmer who runs the Daisy Hill Puppy Farm is on screen talking quite a bit.
We'll find good homes for the lot. You can be proud.
As the title implies, the special reunites Snoopy with his siblings. Spike, Belle, Marbles, Olaf, Molly and Rover, who were invented for this special and never seen again, and Snoopy's brother Andy and his mother Missy, 2 characters who originated in this special and then appeared in the comics. And to learn more about Charles Schultz's real-life dog who inspired Andy, click that link up there for my video on Charlie Brown's Other Christmases. In a nice bit of continuity, there's an appearance by Snoopy's original owner, Lila, along with her mom.
Lila, honey, it's a great puppy farm.
Laurel Page is credited as a voice actor for Lila's mom. Also, Snoopy's family has a tight sound.
Oh, they could kill at Coachella. By the end, we learn that they paved the puppy farm and put up a parking lot. But they get their own rooftop concert on the sidewalk. And there's a lot more to get into regarding Snoopy's family. We'll dive into that in future videos. In another nice bit of continuity, it's spring training. Charlie Brown has the baseball team up for a sponsorship by Hennessy's Hardware.
He said he would sponsor us and buy us uniforms if we won a baseball game.
Which was first mentioned back in Charlie Brown's All-Stars.
But, oh, I couldn't do that, Mr. Hennessy. They're my team. I couldn't tell the girls in Snoopy they couldn't be on the team.
This special is notable in that Charlie Brown's team actually wins a game thanks to a little kid named Leland. Mr. Hennessy appears at the end of this one, and is modeled on Bill Melendez. Charles Schulz seemed to really like his mustache. It Was My Best Birthday Ever, Charlie Brown went direct to VHS in 1997.
And get ready to party hardy with all of your favorite Peanuts pals in the first new Peanuts classic in 11 years.
I don't even know where they got this 11 years thing. This was in 1997, and there had been at least 7 specials since 1986. I don't like to get negative on this channel, but this is honestly my least favorite Peanuts special. Here's everything of consequence that happens in this one. Linus meets a girl. He invites her to his birthday. She shows up right at the end, hands him a flower through the car window, and pieces out.
Dolly Madison.
I mean, maybe she's a ghost? Daughter of a crime boss? Help me out here. The rest of the 25-minute running time is Linus rollerblading. Over. And over. And over. That's when you see this guy, who may or may not be on a cell phone, or possibly just day drunk. And at one point, you see some cashiers and customers in a store. When I wrote the script for this video, this special was not commercially available anywhere. But while I was making the video, the special quietly showed up for purchase on Amazon. But there or on VHS, don't feel any need unless you're a completionist.
And right now, it's only available on video cassette.
I can hardly wait.
Adults talked in It's the Pied Piper, Charlie Brown.
You're just a kid. Worse than that, you're a little kid.
It's the Pied Piper, Charlie Brown is The Story of the Pied Piper with Charlie Brown.
Read me the Pied Piper.
And a bunch of adults who seem to be not only from a different cartoon, but in fact a different decade.
By the old, not the road, but the old mill stream, not the river, but the stream.
It feels like there was an unrelated cartoon about the Pied Piper, and they decided to add in the Peanuts kids. But the credited writer is Schulz himself. So now my theory is that they needed an idea for a special, and one of Charles Schulz's grandkids had just read the Pied Piper in school. Schulz's grandkids were also why the 90s featured reruns so heavily.
Lots of adults were seen and heard. That includes the legendary Frank Welker.
Look, it was never notarized.
See, the governor never signed it.
Nor the senator, nor the chief justice. It's just childish scribbling.
It's true. Nothing is unwatchable if Frank Welker's in it.
That's me.
Once again, this is explicitly non-canonical.
Let's say there was another little village. Something like where we live.
Charlie Brown is reading the story, but it's unclear whether he's inserting himself and all their friends, or if Sally's imagining it that way. Or maybe it's real.
The first time I saw these rules being broken, it was in the Pied Piper adaptation. It felt just so wrong.
As a sad footnote, That was the last special Charles Schulz worked on before his death. They played it safe for the next special, an anthology called A Charlie Brown Valentine.
You like me, Chuck? I do?
Despite this back-to-basics approach, we do see this framed portrait on the wall in Charlie Brown's house, which I'm choosing to believe is a more recent picture of Grandpa Silas. This final one is kind of special. In my video on Charlie Brown's Other Christmases, I talked about little Rerun Van Pelt and his low-key brotherly relationship with Charlie Brown. That relationship became a major part of the final special by Bill Melendez, He's a Bully, Charlie Brown. Spoiler, Charlie Brown gets to be the hero in this one, not the goat. Rerun brings his new marbles to camp. An older kid named
Joe Agate
teaches him how to play by ganking all his marbles.
But I thought you were just teaching me.
You're in the big time now, kid.
Well, that injustice is finally too much for Charlie Brown.
That's the same bully who's been picking on everyone since the first day of camp.
Well then, I'm just going to have to win those marbles back.
There's just one small problem.
I don't even know how to play marbles.
After an inspirational training montage, he challenges Joe Agate.
You never lose because you only play beginners.
And this time it's for all the marbles. Oh, hey, I just got, that's literally...
Knuckle down, Joe. This is for keeps.
The ensuing battle is close. But in the end, good prevails over evil. Charlie Brown even gets to swagger a bit.
Cool Thumb Brown, just a stranger passing through.
I don't know if they knew this would be the last special they made, but it feels like they made a choice to go out on a high note. So that's all well and good, but what about the adult sighting? So the adult is this painting Rerun moves to get at this chest. But in that chest is a big piece of Peanuts lore. See, those weren't just any marbles Joe Agate took. They belong to the marble champion of 1939.
Felix Van Pelt. That's Grandpa when he was a boy.
Charles Schulz had outlined the story for this special, but died before he could write the script. It took longer to produce because, while it was heavily based on this storyline from 1995, as well as this Peppermint Patty Camp story from 1989, and this Marcy Camp story from 1976, it still required a lot of original material to fit the half-hour running time. Couple other factoids about this one. The bus that takes them to camp was the only instance of CG in the classic Peanuts specials. And the young actor who played Joe Agate,
glad to nose ya. Good to see you're back.
Went from that role to this one.
Hi, I'm Jacob.
Showing adults makes sense from a certain point of view. One of the advantages of the cartoons was the ability to break out of the tiny square boxes of the strip. And Charles Schulz acknowledged that part of his decision to not show adults was simply logistics.
Charles Schulz said that he didn't show adults because he couldn't fit them on the panel properly.
That was a big part of it. In the book Peanuts Jubilee, Schulz was quoted as saying that in an 1.5-inch panel there just wasn't room. But lack of space wasn't the only reason. Schulz went on to say that they would be intruding. And to make it clear, he added that adults weren't needed in the strip. And take note of that phrase, adults weren't needed in the strip. As we've seen, a lot of the rules that apply to the comic did not apply to the cartoons. So yes, freed from the confines of the comic panel, it was at least more logistically possible to have adults and kids share the frame. For Bon Voyage Charlie Brown,
Adult come back!
Adults were central to the story they were telling. And once that precedent was set, there's no reason really to not keep it going. But the issue I had was that they just weren't drawn to look like they fit. There is not a trace of Peanuts in this image. The hip teens in Flashbeagle came closest, with standard Peanutsy faces on taller and more filled out bodies. but you have to cut them some slack, right? It's not like Charles Schulz ever drew adults in his style that they could...
If you look hard into the past, Charles Schulz did attempt to draw adults.
It's true. Outside of Peanuts, Charles Schulz actually drew a lot of adults. Though, full disclosure, some of those might actually be by a guy named Jim Sasseville, and it's a whole thing. So if you want me to get into it, let me know down in the comments. And while you're down there, hit those buttons to like and subscribe. And I'm working on that video about Snoopy, and then that's all the rules for Peanuts, right? Good grief.
You don't hear adults racing.
Look at him go. This boy can really fly. He's rounding first and really pouring it on now. Here's the throw. Here's the play at the plate. Holy cow, I think he's going to make it.
A single executive would be the best safeguard against tyranny.
Thanks, Frank Welker.